Hi, everybody. This is Carolina Millan, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Hustle. And today I have a special guest with me. His name is Josh Zloof. I hope I said that correctly. And he's the CEO and founder of Sudden Coffee. How are you, Josh?
Good. Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. Thank you for accepting the invitation. So, first of all, for the few people that might not know about you and about your company, please introduce yourself. Tell us about your story, what led you to the path where you are today and to start your company, and what do you guys do and everything.
So I'm the co-founder of Sudden Coffee. So we invented the world's first specialty instant coffee. So specialty coffee has been this movement over the last 10 to 15 years to treat coffee a lot more like wine. Like you're getting coffee from specific farms. They taste really fruity or interesting. Every coffee tastes a little bit different. And me and my co-founder, we were frustrated by the fact that it was really inaccessible to a lot of people. Like if you don't live near a good cafe, it's kind of hard to get access to this great coffee. So we wanted to take something like that we felt like is a great way to start your day and makes people happy and make it really easy and accessible. And so we made Sudden Coffee, where we basically take those really great coffees and we developed a unique process to brew and freeze dry it and turn it into instant coffee. And so we sell it in these little test tubes and with a whole bunch of different coffee flavors.
And how did you come up with, white coffee specifically? Were you passionate about it before? How did it draw your attention?
It was kind of a long, winding journey. I think the main reason for me was I started really connecting with hospitality and service and wanting to sort of connect with people through food. I started out my career, I did industrial engineering in school. I wanted to basically make a restaurant more efficient. So I went to work at McKinsey in consulting, and I started out basically just going into every factory that I could or call center, things like that. And after that, I wanted to figure out how you could use technology to make things more efficient. So I started working at Groupon on this product called Breadcrumb, which was like Square for high-end restaurants. And there I really realized that it's not about making food efficient. It's about connecting with people. When you serve someone food that they're putting in their body, it's this very human experience. And after that, I left my job. I knew I wanted to do a startup, and I spent about a year and a half, I call it the walking in the desert phase, trying idea after idea after idea, and finally realized I committed to the idea of doing something in food. And then I met my co-founder, got an intro through a former boss, and he had made a prototype of this instant coffee. And the problem was it was hard to scale it, or it was really expensive. And so it was a really good merger. We both really wanted to just make something that would make people feel good. And so, using the operations skill set and the technology skill set, we kind of joined forces on it to make it happen.
What do you think has been one of the keys to the success of your business?
Well, I guess I would say two things. The first one, and this is kind of getting into the idea of like manifesting a lot of things that happen. With a startup, that I've realized that you're always looking for, you start with something and you might have like 10 customers, and then you have to figure out how to get 100 customers, and then you have to figure out how to get 1,000 and then 10,000. You're looking for these exponential ways to increase because you're starting with such small numbers that you have to keep growing faster and faster to be significant. And so I realized initially I would always solve something like an engineer, like you're trying to figure out, you write a work plan and you try to attack it. But when I look back at the moments that were successful for Sudden Coffee, it was these random events that were seemingly unpredictable. We happened to be in the New York Times. My co-founder happened to be this guy who's a New York Times copywriter. And that guy wrote an article about us, and an investor happened to be reading this article and happened to want to invest in a coffee company. And then lo and behold, like 1 month later, this guy called us up and wanted to invest a couple $1 million in the company, which was totally random. Another similar event, we changed our production process. We had no idea. We had this big unknown. We knew we had a problem to solve to figure out how to concentrate coffee. We were really scared that we wouldn't be able to figure out a solution. And within 2 months, we get an email from a vendor that had the exact technology we needed that totally changed the business. And all these were things that, you can't predict, like, how can you make this happen again? And so I realized that I call these black swan events. And so I realized that the way that you can improve them is, number one, by getting really clear on your strategy. Like, what are the 3 things I need to get done in the next 6 months? And then number 2, being more open. So going to things like going to a conference, or trying to write a press release or a blog post to just announce to the world, hey world, I'm looking for help with this problem. Hey world, I need to raise money. Hey world, I need to find this technology. And then you get solutions that get presented to you and receive it. And I think the difference is, for me, like, for a lot of folks who might be, engineer-based mindsets, that's very counterintuitive. Like, the idea that you go to a conference where there's no output was really hard for me to get my head around. But if you get really clear on, these are the 3 things I care about for the next 6 months, my strategy, and then don't worry about solving it. Like, don't worry about, like, this is literally how I'm going to go through it. Just get clear about the idea and then be open to receiving. And I think that concept for me really changed the game for how we approach things now.
That's interesting. I was reading the book for, I think it's the second time I read it, Think and Grow Rich, and they talk exactly about that, what you just mentioned, about manifesting, but in a way where you are open to the opportunities and it doesn't just happen by luck, but
right.
Yeah. What is like the practical way in which you have been able to manifest all these things that seem like accidents but are not?
So the first thing is the strategy piece. And so every quarter I'll actually write out, these are our biggest problems, or this is what we're working on, whether it's on the growth side, the sales side, or on the operations side or technical side. Like, these are the issues we're struggling with, and here's what we need to. Here, if I can have it work out anyway, this is what I would want. And then after that, I guess I think about it in terms of ways you can broadcast out your problem as much as possible. And so instead of having one-to-one meetings, like, instead of saying, okay, I'm going to call one person, maybe I go to a conference where I can meet 30 people or 50 people, or the blog post where you can reach many people, or emailing, all your customers. So another tactic, like, we were trying to hire someone, and we have, good number of followers on our Instagram account. And it didn't occur to me before to post it there. Before, I would have just said, okay, great. We put up a job post and it's on our website, and maybe we hire a recruiter, and the recruiter goes like 1-to-1. But if you post on your Instagram, then it can get shared and posted to more people. If you write a blog post about it, it goes to more people. Or you have your customer list, email all thousands, the thousands of them, and it goes to more people. And so it's everything around broadcasting is the mindset that I kind of try to think through now.
What have been some of the challenges you have faced, or some of the mistakes you have made along the way, that you have learned from and that people can learn from as well?
So I think the hardest thing for us was really around marketing and growth. We started this company in 2015, and at the end of 2015, and we thought that there's a lot of talk about how you should have a website and you should have a subscription, and that's what everyone's doing, and have a cool brand. And so we started doing that, and we basically tried everything under the sun around Facebook ads, or content marketing, or Pinterest, or Instagram influencers, like all of these different things. And eventually, we only recently, in the last 6 months, found a strategy that was really working for us. And it turned out to be doing partnerships. So we switched over to our business model to working with other roasters, other coffee companies, and we make custom instant coffees for them under their brand, and they sell it through their stores. And it ended up being something that was offline, traditional retail, and so I think the interesting thing was just realizing how you know something's working or not. I think we spent a lot of time working on growth channels that weren't really working, but they always almost were working. And I think that's one of the frustrating things in marketing, is that everything always seems like it's going to almost work. And so you keep thinking like, you know, my Facebook ads will be profitable if I like get a better photo, if I make something, you know, like slightly better, and then it'll start to work better. When the channels that started working, it worked 10 times better than everything else. We started getting sales faster than we could keep up with. We started, it started going viral a little bit, where every coffee company we would close would tell other coffee companies about it. Even though we were making mistakes, like I would forget to answer emails, or, you know, our labels would be messed up, or something would happen, they would still want more. They would still want the product to work. Whereas when we were selling on Facebook or, you know, on our website, every small thing we would get complaints about all the time. And so I think the big takeaway I had, like if I was doing this again, and there's plenty of books that say this, that tell you to basically just try all these different growth channels, but it's really hard to necessarily feel it. But I think the main takeaway I have now is, if the channel is working, it will hit you over the head that it's working, and it will be working so well that it'll be hard to screw it up. And if you find that you're doing a lot of work to get a channel to work, it's probably not the right channel. And it's hard to do that, but it means just, you know, cut. If something's not working, quickly cut it and move on to the next one, so that you can get through as many as you can as fast as possible. We were in this incubator, we were in Y Combinator, and that was one of the big lessons. And I still didn't really get it after I was told to do that, but that's kind of the mentality or approach that I think really worked.
That's interesting. But right now, like, what is your main strategy right now to get customers? How are you scaling the business?
Right now, since we made the switch, our biggest challenge now has been capacity. And so every new coffee company that we work with, I think we realized that if you there's a really big focus now to go online, but the problem with being online is no one can see your product all the time. And so we made this switch where basically, because we work with these coffee companies, they're putting it in their stores. And we also were really intentional about having it almost be like Intel inside. So every box we make still says Sudden Coffee in the corner, even though it's branded as a roaster's box. I can actually show you one of these. One second.
Yeah, sure.
This is an example of one of our boxes. And so this is for Intelligentsia. And in the corner, it says Sudden Coffee.
Cool.
And this is an example of how the coffee comes. It comes in a test tube like this.
Nice.
I think the biggest things were, you know, we realized that we didn't have to be online to make this successful. And if we were in person, more people would see the product. But we wanted to keep our story as part of it. So when you are online, you know, you get someone's email or they can read about you and all the stuff. So we wanted to make sure that that was still there. So every box that we make comes with an info card about Sudden. Our logo is on it. We try to tell the story through it as much as possible to make it keep spreading with more and more people. I think the other thing was just working with other brands and doing partnerships where I think a lot of times, you know, we forget how hard it is to make a brand. And so if you work with people who've already been doing that for years and years, it can really get you to skip a few steps ahead, where they already have followers and places where they can post it.
Absolutely. How do you, something you mentioned before we started the interview was that you like helping people figure out what business they want to get into. So for the people listening who haven't yet started a business, what is your advice to figure out what niche or what industry to get into, or how to find out what you're passionate about, what you would like to do? What is your advice for them?
So as I said earlier on, I spent about 1.5 years just trying out all these different ideas. And it took me a while to get comfortable with what I wanted to work on. And so it felt really challenging this whole time, trying out an idea for a couple months, moving on to the next one, moving on to the next one. I think there's the big thing that changed for me was I went through this exercise where I hired a coach for myself. And so I think number one, invest in yourself, invest in yourself monetarily. Like I paid for someone to help me get through this process. Don't just read books, but instead of taking the money you'd use for a vacation to go to a beach for 1 week, you can use that same money to get a coach for 3 months to help you figure out what you want to do. And I went through this exercise around figuring out my core values. So basically, through the coach, ask yourself 3 questions. What are 3 times that you felt the most excited, 3 times that you felt the most accomplished, and 3 times you felt the most alive? And just journal about those 3 things. And then after that, you compare it to a list of core values. If you just Google lists of core values, you'll find a lot of these different values. And so the ones that were true for me were growth, purpose, excitement, relaxation, and community. And what was really interesting is I didn't care about innovation or creativity or these things that, when you're doing a startup, you're like, I need to come up with a new idea, or I need to come up with something intellectually hard or complex or whatever. And so all of a sudden, all these food things made sense because it has to do with community. When you serve someone food, it can be relaxing. Like there's this very human element to it that I was scared to believe in myself for doing. And so once I figured that out, it kind of made everything else fall into place. And so I think the biggest advice I give people was to figure out your values and realize how your values are different than other people's values. And if you can dial into that, it'll be easier for you to just figure out what to work on or be happy with what you're doing.
That's great. That's good advice, actually. Another thing that drew my attention about you, so you've been to this festival. I don't even know if it's a festival. I've never been there. Burning Man. A lot of people talk about it. There are celebrities that go, all sorts of people. How's the experience of attending this festival? First of all, how many times have you been there? And second, how has that impacted you as an entrepreneur and as a person?
I got into it. I have an older sister, and she took me along. This was I was in between jobs, and thought I was going to a music festival, and I went with my sister and just fell in love with it. And the reason was it's a place where basically the people who go make the festival, and so everyone you'll see people at the time. This was right after I was in consulting. Everything I was trying to do, or in my mind, if you are working on something, it has to generate revenue somehow. And there are people that spend all year working on these art structures for free, for fun. And so it taught me that you could spend a lot of time working on something just for pleasure. And I think the other thing that I really got out of it, so a few years into going is when I started going down the startup journey. And you can basically try out or build whatever you want there. And so I knew that I wanted to do something with food. And I also was struggling making a company or figuring out how to do it. And so I started a Burning Man camp, and it ended up being a 100-person organization. And it's this massive logistical effort to do this thing. And so I went through the process of, I said, I really want to make a bar. I've never served drinks to people. I have all these customers at Groupon who are bars and restaurants, and let me try doing that. I want to see what their life is like. And so it was almost like training wheels for what I ended up doing. where I made this camp. I got together a leadership team. I wrote, job requirements for everything. And then we ended up making a bar, and I served people at the bar, and I realized that I really like connecting with people. And so I really tell people that I think Sudden Coffee grew out of that experience. When I came back after that year, I said, okay, great. I want to do this food thing. I'm good at it. I had a friend who came with me that year, and he said, what you built here is amazing. Like, I could never do this. And he was a top software engineer that I know. And I was like, what do you mean? This is so easy for me. Like, I can't code. I can't make apps the way you can make apps. And he was like, what are you talking about? Making apps for me is really easy. And it was that same realization around the values thing where I realized, oh my God, if you're doing something that's in alignment with your values, it's really easy for you. And if you're doing something that's not in alignment with your values, it's really hard for you.
Yeah.
And so it showed me it helped me verify what my values were in a way that was low pressure. Because if you screw up at Burning Man, like, no, if your bar doesn't work, like, no one cares, it's easy to mess with.
So you recommend, this is going to be your 9th year?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess you recommend that people go.
I definitely recommend people go. I don't think it's for everyone, but it's definitely, I definitely recommend trying to go at least once, especially if you're an extrovert. Like, I think it's just a really great vacation if you're someone that's extroverted and you like meeting people. And another thing I love about it is no one has phones. Like, you can't really use your phone there. Mm-hmm. So, like, when else in the world are you in a place where everyone is on vacation together and no one can use a phone and there's like no distraction? I think that's part of what makes it so why you can connect with people in a unique way.
Very cool. Very cool. Right now, like, what are other maybe passion projects or anything else that you are working on, whether it's with Sudden Coffee or anything else?
I wouldn't call this a big project, but as I mentioned earlier, one a value for me is community. And I've started to really take a proactive role in trying to create community, especially like lately for my friend group, but just in general. And so one concept I noticed was, I think I realized I needed to have that in my life to be happy. And I noticed that lately for a lot of folks or friends that I have, as everyone's getting older, you end up not having as much time, and people are spending time with their kids, and it's harder to find moments to interact with people that you might have known your whole life. Like your friends from high school who you would see every day. Now I'm lucky if I get to see them, once a month or once every 3 months. And so I started to create a Friday night dinner ritual where I invite a bunch of friends over for Friday night, and I really thought intentionally about how to simplify it. So we order food and basically go around the room and say one thing that you're grateful for that's ideally not work related that happened that week, like a weekly gratitude. And I basically wanted a way to cut through, like, when you have your group of friends, you always get stuck in the catch up around, like, how's your job going? Oh, I hate my boss. Oh, like, my kids are blah, 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 my nanny. And I wanted to just cut through that to get to an actual feeling with people. So we started doing that. And I'm trying to still think of ways to expand it. But for me, like, I'm always thinking of different community-based things as my passion projects, so ways to just bring people together with more intention. And I think, like, that's just important to me.
Yeah, and it seems like for you the main thing is doing it offline, right? You're more interested in building like in-person communities, right?
Yeah, which I think is a blessing and a curse, because if you're in tech, you'll say that means it doesn't scale. But yeah, exactly. Like the in-person, tactile interaction, I think is to me really valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because also like for your company, you mentioned you're doing more marketing offline than digital right now, right? Or are you doing anything digital?
We're doing podcasts obviously as a channel,
Yes.
and we were doing some PR, but we basically stopped marketing. Since we switched to this B2B model, we've actually been able to cut our marketing dollars to almost nothing, and the roasters are doing the marketing for us. So they'll put it on their website, they'll put it on Instagram, and create this in person. It's on and offline, but they're really kind of pushing it, which has been really cool.
Now you have like a little army of people selling your product for you.
Exactly. Yeah. And we kind of fell into it. It was kind of an accident, where a coffee company contacted us and said, "Hey, we want to do this." But yeah, now with every new roaster we set up, it's another whole group of people who are excited about it and pushing it and evangelizing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. I'm also a little bit curious about your daily, like your day-to-day routine. How do you organize your day? How do you start your day to get the most out of it?
So I have a morning ritual.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing is when I go to bed, I put my phone into airplane mode and I leave it off airplane mode until I get in the car to go to work. And then I wake up and actually took this ritual from one of my friends. I wake up, the first thing I do is I make a coffee, and then I
Of course you do.
of course, and I read a book, usually some kind of fiction. So something that's totally not work related. I basically don't want to get my mind into a stress mode as the first thing, and I do that casually, while drinking this coffee. And so the idea was I always had a hard time waking up in the morning. So now I look forward to something. I've been reading this book and I'm excited about reading it. And then after that, I meditate. And then I meditate for 15 minutes using the Headspace app. And then I go to work and start my day. And I'm not a morning person, but when I started doing this routine, I ended up waking an hour earlier, and I was actually excited to do that, to kind of get into it. And then I'm trying to think of other things. I like to give people counterintuitive startup advice. So I'm like a really big believer in having like a 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 schedule as much as possible, as well as actually taking your weekends off. Unless you have something really urgent. I think that it's really easy when you are working on your own business. There's an infinite amount of things that you can do to make your business better all the time. It will never end. And so you have to decide how much you are going to let it control you, or the other way around. And so if you say, hey, I'm only going to fit in as much work as I can from this time to this time, it forces you to make tough decisions around prioritization, and it will force you to do the highest value things. And so sometimes that's going to mean like not answering, not getting through your whole inbox, or not replying to that thing, or, we're like notoriously late on taxes because we don't owe any taxes. So it's like, we're not making money, right? We're a startup. So you're not going to get in trouble. So we like pay taxes, with the delayed deferred payment, things like that, so that you can do the highest value things in this fixed amount of time. And I just think that's, I've been on this startup path now for 5 years, and it's so critical to do that as much as possible, to actually have a life as much as possible.
I absolutely agree with you, because right now I find myself in that situation sometimes where there's no limit, right? Where work ends and life begins. So I think that's a really good way of seeing it. Like even as an entrepreneur, having a 9 to 5 or 9 to 6, you decide, maybe you want it to be 11 to 7, whatever works, right, for someone. But having that limit, I think, is important, and I hope to get there soon as well.
Yeah, and it's hard because everyone in your life will tell you the opposite. Especially like investors will say like, oh, we want to invest in an entrepreneur who's like fully in this. And it's like, you are fully in it, but you need to have balance to have a life as part of it.
Yeah, no, that's really important. And I think it's good advice as well for anyone listening who is just getting started. Of course, sometimes when you're just getting started, it might be harder if it's just you, but as soon as you can hire some people to help you, and then you can organize your day better and have the time for yourself. I also find it interesting what you said about reading a fiction book in the morning instead of like a, personal development or business books. But I guess you still find the time for those.
Not lately. Actually.
Not lately.
I read my fair share, and then you kind of realize that a lot of them are similar.
Yeah.
So I'll flip through stuff if I like really need help on a topic. Like I'll flip through a product management book or something like that. But what I have realized is actually really useful is reaching outside of your sphere. So with a startup, you're always trying to do something you haven't done before. And so it's actually pretty easy. We have this great tool called LinkedIn that anyone can use. And if you have a question about, I want to figure out how M&Ms are made, you can probably look up literally like 20 people who have made M&Ms. And if you email 20 of them, one of them will probably be open to having a conversation with you for 20 minutes about M&Ms and tell you a bunch of stuff for free. And so, I've found now that when I have a problem like that, I'll go straight to the source. Like, let me find the best person who knows this thing and just email 20 of those people and see what help you can get. And most times people are, as long as you frame it as like, I have a lot of respect for who you are and what you're doing, and I want to learn. Most people like talking about it, which I think is really interesting.
I think LinkedIn right now is very underappreciated by a lot of people, including myself. I'm not using it enough, but there's a lot of potential there for connections and building a brand and everything. So yeah. What's next? What's next for you? What's next for Sudden Coffee? What are your plans for maybe the remainder of 2019 and beyond?
We're now trying to raise additional financing, which has been more like every time we raise money, I think as an entrepreneur, it's just for me challenging. It's like a very tiring thing, but it's going. And our goal is to get through. We basically want to work with as many coffee companies as we can. So right now we're at 18. We ideally want to work with 50 by the end of the year, including going international. So we just got a roaster in Australia. We just got a roaster in Iceland. And we want to go to South America. We want to go to Asia as much as possible. Because a lot of people drink instant coffee outside of the US. And then, I think it's, we're trying to build a bigger factory. So we're out of capacity now. We're like kind of struggling to keep up with orders. And so we just need to figure out how to build a factory. So if anyone out there is listening and you know how to build a factory, please call us, because we don't know yet.
Good problem to have, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. How do you go about raising funds? What is your strategy for that?
I think a combination of the first thing is creating a fundraising deck, and depending on the different stages you're at of the company, you need to create a different type of deck. But I think if you're like brand new starting a company, you really just need to show, hey, I'm working on an interesting market. There's a really big market for something. Ideally like a multi-billion-dollar market, and we have an interesting product idea, and that could be enough as just your vision. And you can potentially raise money just with that. Like, you don't necessarily need to have it built out, or you don't need to have sales. You can just have your, like I call it the vision pitch. It's like, I have this really good idea. There's a really big market, and I'm the person, or we have the team, the two of us to do it, which is enough. And then I think it started originally with cold emailing. You try to reach out to other investors. I think, if you look at a venture capital firm, their job is to evaluate companies. And so you need to send lots of cold emails to at first just get people in the pipeline. And then once you do that, you then hop from one person to the next. So if you pitch one person and they're not a good fit, then ask them for intros to the next person, and intros to the next person, and see if you can talk to friends who raised money, and basically just get as many introductions as you can. And then after that, you basically go through and have these meetings with everyone to go through your fundraising deck. And over time, like if you find the right person who's really interested in it, then the conversation moves pretty fast after that. I think one of the biggest tips that I can give people who are trying to raise money is if somebody, it's kind of like dating. If somebody likes the idea, it's going to move really fast, and you're not going to have to really convince them a lot. And so instead of getting stuck, like you pitch 5 people and everyone's going to give you a maybe or tell you that no one's going to flat out say no, or that's very rare. And so sometimes you get stuck. It's like following up with the same person again and again. And that's actually the wrong thing to do. Try to talk to like 50 people or 100 people instead of 5. And you just need to find one who gets really excited about it. If you are spending a lot of time following up with the same person, move on. It's a waste of time. And I think that's kind of that was like a learning that we had. Like in our case, we would spend in the first couple of fundraisers, we pitch someone and they don't drink coffee. And it's like, I know that they're not going to get it, I spent all this time following up or sending them more information or more sales data, but they just didn't get it. They're never going to get it. And so it's better to find the person who gets coffee and move on, and just find those people is a better way to approach it.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Like try to talk to more people and don't waste time following up with those who are not interested, even if they will be polite and not say no.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. Josh, thank you so much for your time today. It's been very valuable, inspirational as well. Do you have any final words of encouragement or any final advice for the people listening who are in a startup or maybe thinking about starting a business?
Yeah, I think my final thing would be don't give up. Your first idea is probably going to fail. You might have to go through 10 ideas. Just keep doing it. It's going to feel really embarrassing. It's going to feel like you're going to feel weird telling your parents or your friends that you like switched ideas again and again. And that's okay. And everyone goes through it. All of the like stories in the New York Times about how successful this company is, they behind the scenes went through it like in a very painful way. So don't be discouraged. I think that's the advice that I like to give people.
Absolutely. And if anybody knows how to build a factory, you have to reach out to Josh. Or if anybody wants to, sell the product. By the way, where can people find you? Where can they reach out to you if they're interested?
You can find us at suddencoffee.com or our Instagram page. If you see coffee in a test tube anywhere, it's usually made by us. So it'll be in Whole Foods in Northern California, hopefully near Chicago and LA soon, and more places. Feel free to email me, josh@suddencoffee.com, or a helpline, help@suddencoffee.com for questions. And if anyone out there knows how to build a factory or wants to sell coffee to coffee companies, definitely reach out and let us know.
Absolutely. Awesome. I'm going to be putting the details in the description of the episode. Thank you so much once again. Thanks to everybody who is watching or listening to the interview, to the episode. Make sure you contact Josh and that you follow his company. And of course, leave a review if you enjoyed this interview. And thank you, Josh, so much for your time today.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me.
Awesome. Thank you. We'll speak soon. And hey, if you need somebody if you're thinking about expanding to South America, well, I'm in Chile, but let me know.
Cool. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Awesome. Thank you. Talk to you soon.